Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 8th seminar in the Iscia seminar series, Games and Play. It's a real pleasure to introduce Erin Smith today, an artist and PhD student from Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, whose work spans sculpture and site-specific ephemeral land art, with a strong interest in mythology, the natural world, and the ways art can deepen our sense of human connection. Her practice is also shaped by a commitment to sustainable and regenerative art making, and her work has been exhibited widely both locally and internationally, as well as featured in a number of publications. In addition, Erin was a creative facilitator for the Iscia Horizon 2055 research project in 2025, and she has led workshops and creative sessions at conferences, art festivals, and international schools. So today she'll be presenting Storytelling Under the Stars, a playful venture into collaborative mythmaking in the Tankwa Karoo. Drawing on her experience at the Tankwa Artscape artistry residency in April 2026, Erin reflects on the creation of a site-specific shadow puppet performance under the stars, while also exploring storytelling as a powerful form of shared meaning-making and social cohesion. She'll also recount the story, how the Mantis became the stars. So please join me in warmly welcoming Erin Smith.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, I guess I'm going to jump right into it. I just need to share my screen and remember how to do this. Let's see. I think it's like that. Can I be seen? Is it working?
Yes,
Yes.
looks good.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just jump right into it then. So every year in late April, tens of thousands of people flock to the Tankwa Karoo from around the world to attend Africa Burn, an event that temporarily lights up the desert with art, music, and fire. But in the weeks before the burn, while silence is still the loudest sound in the desert, a smaller migration to the Tankwa occurs, drawing a handful of artists from lands near and far to Stonehenge Nature Reserve for the Tankwa Artscape Artists Residency. Over the 2 weeks that they spend within the great expanse of landscape, under the vast skies and around an ever-burning hearth fire, they become a community, a family, a tribe. In early April of 2026, I was one of 11 artists who participated in the Tankwa Artscape. Before I get into the experience and the creative work I did there, I would like to thank the wonderful humans behind the organization of the residency, including JP de Villiers, Thomas Barry, and Kim Goodwin, as well as all the other facilitators behind the scenes organizers who were involved in bringing this event together and looking after us artists so well. I also want to thank the Iscia chair who made it possible for me to attend the residency. Uh, I came to the Tankwa with a particular idea in mind of what I wanted to make when I got there. I'd written a proposal after all and had all kinds of over-intellectualized ideas of what I wanted to make and how philosophical it would all be. It was all very serious. But driving into Stonehenge, before my feet had even touched the ground, I had already discarded all preconceived plans for the work I would be making there. Just seeing the landscape open up around us through the dusty car window was enough for me to know that this place would challenge me. To say that Tankwa is vast is both an understatement and a disservice to its majesty. Those who have been there know that no words are sufficient to paint a picture capable of accurately describing that sublime land, and those who have not been there, well, I'll do my best. It's easy to think of the desert as brown, colorless, boring, empty, especially from afar, or when only seeing it from photographs, which, like words, fail at capturing its beauty. But like my fellow artist Claire Lichtenstein instead said, perhaps the reason we think the desert is brown is because all the colors are mixed together. Because when you look closer, a different picture emerges. Colors paint the desert floor. Yellows, pinks, greens, blues, reds, purples. If this picture is not enough to convince you, then this is a palette of colors that I dropped from this single photo alone. Perhaps the reason we think the desert is brown is because all the colors are mixed together. Tankwa is also far from boring and anything but empty. Here, the ground is tiled with perfect geometry, the envy of the greatest stonemasons. Here, rocks are exquisitely painted in ochres, abstract splashes of vibrant color that no painter could replicate with brush and canvas. Here, rock crystals encrust the ground underfoot like ornate beadwork. Here, the land itself is art. As a visitor to this place, I was enraptured. Though as an artist, come here with the expectation of making something in this land that was already perfect, I was daunted. This land is beautiful. It is also ancient, and it wears its layered history on its sleeve. To walk over the Tankwa soil is to tread on hundreds of millions of years of sedimentation and erosion and sedimentation and erosion. Patchwork fossils crisscross the surface, whispering of times long forgotten, of ever-flowing rivers and wetlands and the strange creatures that roamed them, creatures that would become the ancestors of all mammals, humans included. The land tells a story of glaciers and volcanoes, of inland seas and continental drift. It tells more recent stories, too. Stories of humans, from the tools left by South Africa's First Nations people, scattered on the surface as if they were just forgotten there yesterday, to the traces left by those desperate people who tried and failed to farm in the desert, dam walls and dry riverbeds, reservoirs holding nothing but rock and abandoned hope, and long stretches of obsolete fencing that keeps nothing out and nothing in, yet cut across ancient migratory routes. To older stories, different stone tools, fashioned from rocks that do not occur naturally here, brought in from unknown far-off lands by humans who looked like us and thought like us, but are separated from us by some 50,000 years or so. Enigmatic stone shelters hewn with tremendous effort from a low ridge to provide some relief from the relentless Tankwa wind, now standing empty, their stories untold. A bullet casing, a blown tire, a tote bag, a genocide. The land remembers all. I've said before that I'm no stranger to ephemerality in my art making. As a land artist, I'm most comfortable when I know that whatever work I make will fade and degrade and return to the earth within a relatively short period of time after I declare it finished. But ephemerality has a different meaning in Tankwa. Materials that, where I'm from, would rot and decompose within a year can remain preserved for decades or even longer. Even a footprint can remain preserved in the desert's memory for years and years. So, in the face of all this, the fragility of the landscape and the weight of the history it carries, I did what seemed to me the sanest and most sensible thing I could do. I broke down. Under the infinite field of stars that dust the dark Tankwa sky in silver, I wept for the ancestors that lived here and died here, for the violence that was enacted here, for the sublime beauty that is ever present here, for the folly and wisdom of humans that left their marks here, and for my own folly in coming here and thinking that I could presume to arrogantly insert myself into the history that is written on this land. How was I going to be able to tell the organizers that they were wrong to select me, that I wasn't ready for this, that I had nothing worthy to offer this perfect wounded land? How could I possibly reconcile the fact that I was an outsider here? It was that same night, after I managed to pull myself together and I was returning to the group, that I bumped into one of the facilitators and fellow artist, Charles, who showed me something that blew my mind. There is a mantis in the sky, only visible on the darkest nights, in places that aren't flooded by light pollution, where you can see the full grandeur of the Milky Way. It's not just a constellation, a stick figure stretch of the imagination. It's the whole sky, darks and lights outlining the form of a creature that travels from east to west with the turning of the earth. I tried to photograph it some nights later, but like most things in Tankwa, a camera can't do it justice. It doesn't appear clearly here, and I'm not sure if you can see my mouse pointer or if there's some way I can do a little laser pointer thing, but I will try. Uh, if you see there, these dark patches are its eyes. Its head is somewhere like that, and its body comes along like that. Its wings and its legs stretching out in front. Again, it's very unclear on this photo, but such is the limitation when trying to translate magic into a virtual seminar. But this for me was a turning point in the residency, a moment which, like some alchemical transmutation, uh, it changed the way I was seeing and being in the land. Not to say that the heaviness and the history was forgotten, but that I learned to see the myth and magic that was present here as well. I began to see more of the Tankwa's playfulness, its silliness. It's a complex place, for sure. The mantis in the sky became a bit of a talking point in the camp. As the days passed, we spent some time viewing the work of previous artists in residence that had persevered in the landscape. Beautiful, moving, carefully considered pieces that left the spaces they occupied richer for their presence. But there was one that stood out to me that felt different. It was charming, whimsical, light, and playful, and left nearly no trace of itself behind. On a dry pan, a small miniature forest arranged in a circle made from twigs is all that physically remained of the work of artist Ian Murray, who had attended the residency some years prior. We were told that he had made some small figures, and on one dark night he had used a simple head torch to cast shadows of his figures onto the white, flat floor of the pan, bringing them to life as moving shadow puppets. Only a few fragments of video existed of Ian's shadow show, but it was enough to fascinate me and inspired me to reactivate the space in tribute to the artist whose work demonstrated the Tankwa spirit of whimsy and playfulness. Because as it was, we were also told that Ian had been battling an illness during his time at the residency, and it was only a few months later that he passed away. And so, while I didn't yet have a concrete idea of what I wanted to do, I put forward my idea of reactivating the Shadow Theatre in some way, and was given the go-ahead to do so. Yes, tell us a story, said Sarah, one of the facilitators, which set me to puzzle over what story to tell. And so I began gathering stories, asking my fellow artists if they knew any, and sharing my own in turn. There were times when the workshop tent became a place of imagination, as we took turns telling and listening to tales and discussing what they could mean afterwards. A book that another artist, Kat, had brought and left in the communal area was also a source of inspiration. It was Credo Mutwa's Iscia, the Animal, and it contained a rich anthology of African fables and folklore. With my mind full of stories, I sat gazing up at the mantis in the night sky, trying to piece together a tale I could tell. I wanted it to feel African, authentic to the land we were immersed in, though I didn't want to simply replicate one of the stories from Mutwa's book. I wanted it to speak to our shared experiences in the Tankwa, and I wanted it to be a gift to the other artists with whom I was going through this experience. And as I sat gazing up at the mantis, wondering if the people who came before looked up at the sky and recognized Karin, the mantis god above them, wondering what stories were told about the stars by the earlier people who lived out here so very long ago. And the beginnings of the story I would tell started to come to me. So I wrote a fable of my own, the story of how the mantis became the stars. It was a story of overcoming and becoming, of transformation and connection, but most of all, it was just a sweet, simple story. The kind one might tell a child, like how the zebra got her stripes or why the baobab grows upside down. In preparation for my shadow show, I made a series of figures using the wood of the invasive mesquite trees that grew all along the dry riverbed. I made a figure for each of the animal characters in my story, as well as 3 stone figures to represent the grandmother character, who was the story's narrator, and 2 children to listen to her, and occasionally interrupt with questions, the same questions that were raised by my own mind to point out holes in my story. Including them meant I could simply have grandmother reprimand a child for interrupting instead of actually fixing the problems. As the story developed and I began to plan out how the shadow theatre part of it would go, I made the decision to pre-record the story instead of reciting it live, as this would make rehearsing and performing the show a lot easier. I worked in collaboration with Matladi Matabane, a sound artist and one of the residency facilitators, who did the most magical job of bringing the story to life, both as its narrator and with an original soundtrack that she made in a small white cube that was our media room and recording studio. And here you can see our very high-tech soundproofing system at work while we were recording her voice. At some point during the process, I had the idea of bringing the other artists into the storytelling process itself. I wanted this to be a gift to them after all, and I figured what better way to make it so than to include them. So to each character in the story, I assigned an artist who would be that character's voice actor. And lucky for me, they were all great sports and went right along with it. All that I gave them was a list of their characters' lines with no context for the broader story, and the instruction not to share their lines with anyone else to keep the story a surprise. One by one, McClady and I recorded their lines with them, then sat together and mixed the audio clips into a single file. Once she added her sound, the audio part of the story was complete. The night of the show came, and I anxiously watched the sky. It had clouded over, and I was worried, as the crux of my story relied on the stars being out. But yet again, Tankwa magic struck. Shortly before the show, the sky cleared completely, like curtains parting on the stage, and the story began. One night, somewhere in the Tankwa, a group of around 20 people, artists and creatives all, sat in a semicircle on a dry pan. Each held a wooden animal figure, and as the story began to play over a small speaker that was surprisingly powerful in the silence of the desert, the storyteller shone her torch at each of the characters in turn, their shadow coming to life when it was their turn to speak in the story. When the end came, a little wooden mantis sculpture was burned, its sparks flying up to the sky to join the mantis in the stars that gazed down on us, just as she has for millennia. You're supposed to document your work as an artist, especially as an artist working ephemerally, especially as an academic who needs to provide evidence of outputs in order to validate anything you do. But the documentation I have of the shadow show story that we performed together out on the pan is minimal. In a way, I'm glad for it. It was one of those rare moments that don't end up on social media. It belongs in the memories of those who were there. It's held in the memory of the Tankwa, alongside countless stories told beside countless fires, under the same silver sea of stars. That said, I do have a small snippet of the kind of thing that happened. It's not from that very night, but I thought I would share it anyway. So hopefully it works and it lets me play this video. And this was the owl character that was one of the characters in the story. And it's actually quite a fun shadow puppet to play with. This video was taken by a fellow artist of mine while I was playing with the shadow puppet a few nights later. I think it was actually the final night of the residency. But yeah, unfortunately, you won't get to see the full story and you won't get to see uh, the whole show that was played out that night because it was a site-specific story. It was made to be told on that pan under the stars. And as I said, it relies on the stars being out and it relies on a full starry sky, not the kind of sky we can see in the city. And it's not the kind of story that can be told over a Zoom call. So all I really have is my word and this small snippet of video that, yes, I did make something out there in the desert. And hopefully that's enough.
Erin, all I can say is you say that the experience was landscape specific. You had to be there. And all I can comment on is that I found your presentation deeply effective. It was not only intellectually engaging, but emotionally resonant. I can't even speak, I'm so flabbergasted. In the way it drew together storytelling, landscape, myth, and play. And there was something very poetic and aesthetically powerful in how you created atmosphere that was so immersive, moving, and memorable that although your presentation wasn't something site specific, I feel like I was there. So it was
Thank you,
really,
Jenna.
really beautiful. And with that said, I'm going to open the floor up to questions and comments and discussions. I'm sure, there's Andrea.
Yeah, sorry, I can't put my hand up because I'm the host.
Okay.
So I just have to go, and then whatever. Erin, I can't agree more with Jenna that it's actually a profoundly kind of provocative and evocative, etc., type of thing to encounter. And what I found really interesting, and I think maybe, is that you've got a sense of awe and wonder and playfulness that makes you want to cry.
Yeah,
Um,
I did several
and
times.
yeah, even your presentation makes one feel tearful. And I was kind of interested in that that connection between that teariness and play.
Mm.
And if you have any sort of comment about that, or if you just want to leave it as a comment. But yeah, no, I'm feeling tearful. I think I'm
Sure.
going, you know.
I don't know if I want to say sorry or not, but
No, no, no.
yeah, no, it's a strong observation. And definitely what was felt in the moment and on site also. There were times when I felt immense grief. Like I said, especially with the weight of the history of that place, but also the beauty and the silliness and the fun, and it's in a way. Uh, Being out there, it strips away anything that you can hide behind and amplifies everything that you are, is the way that I came to think about it. And yeah, even while I was doing the performance of the shadow play, um, there was a point where I was emotional and I nearly cried during the performance itself. Um, I think maybe that's part of the transformativeness of it all. Um, like I said, the main character, the little sculpture of the mantis, at the end of the story, I burned it, but it's still there in the stars, and now I can't see it anymore because I'm in the city. But it's still there, and I know it's still there, and it's like a little inside hee hee that I can look up at the sky and know that it's there, even though I can't see it. Yeah, so I don't know. There's some kind of magic there,
Yeah,
and the
thanks, man.
contrast
Yeah,
between it's sad and it's joyful, and it's both, and it's everything.
yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Mm.
Thanks, Andrea. I can see that Alex has put yes, his camera on, so I know he wants to ask you something.
Yeah, I also can't put my hand up for some reason, but
Mm.
yeah, Erin, this is more obviously I echo all the words and sentiments that have already been expressed, and this is just more a comment than a question, but maybe you can reflect on this live as well. But it struck me that the desert is always kind of a metaphor for emptiness or a barren land that is empty of any kind of experiences of awe. And now I can't think about the desert in that way anymore because of your presentation.
Not at all, man.
And I think that's what the best kind of art does for me. I have an idea of something, I'm exposed to a work, and that work changes the way that I imagine something to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for that.
Thanks very much, Alex. Before we turn to other questions, Glenn has a question. Glenn, I'm going to let you go and then I'll ask my question. Go ahead.
Thank you, colleagues. It's so kind of you, Jenna, to let me go ahead of you. But of course, Erin, as you know, we've said it was so poetic, and thank you so much for the beautiful journey that you took us on with your residency. I've got two prongs to a question for you. The first one is to speak about the sense of community and individuality, and this idea of being involved in a social cohesion aspect also, and because it's a residency taken up by a particular community of artists who were hand selected competitively to be there. And how did you navigate the sense of being part of a group of people deliberately trying to work on their own individual artistic outputs, but also foster social cohesion? What did you do for you having to withdraw into solitary confinement, to be creative, to execute, but also know that it's not just for yourself, it's in a presentation to the community. So take me through the journey of the self in relation to the others around you. That's part one. And then part two would be this fascination that I've taken from your presentation with the concept of time. really, because you did allude to it more than once. And I'm reminded about, for example, the moment you mentioned where I think it was a participant in a former residency, I forget his name, who had passed away shortly after
Yeah,
you had
Murray.
been there. And so that there was a so time and the gravitas of doing and creating and executing is valuable to you, because you know that I'm giving something here just as that person did, and here they are not with us any longer. And that was the gift giving in the residency. What did that aspect of time do to make you also think about the limitation of the time you would have on the residency, the amount of time you've got to execute something? Was there a spillover effect of making you more aware of your own mortality, of the type of materials that you were working with, which had also been ravaged by time? And then there's the sense of looking up into the night sky and engaging with the mantis through the mode of timelessness. One becomes timeless in that moment, in being attached and connected with the cosmology that you are observing. So I hope it's not too much of a mouthful like I usually give. But I see we do have a bit of time, so I'm hoping that you might just be able to unpack a little bit of that with me. But like everybody else, love your work and love your presentation. And I'm just so impressed with the amount of growth you've also undergone over the past couple of years of knowing you. So kudos to you, Erin.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, wow, that's a lot of questions in one go. I really appreciate it. That's wonderful. So to start with, for your first question about the self and other in the community, honestly, I think the organizers did a phenomenal job in selecting the group. I mean, that's an art in and of itself, is curating a group to be on residency together. Um, and we all honestly got along really well. It was a really, really cohesive group. From the get-go, we became friends and like family towards the end. Um, we were all coming from different places and obviously with different experiences and from different places in terms of our outlook also. Um, there were people who were from overseas, people from South Africa, people who were originally from Southern Africa who had moved overseas when they were young. So quite a lot of different uh, responses to coming into that place. Some people felt more at home faster than others. Um, I honestly, for the first couple of days, I felt very othered by the land, although I think it was myself doing the othering actually. Um, and I had to kind of come to terms with that. Um, and others who had been there many, many times before felt right at home or were familiar with the feeling of kind of grappling with that sense of belonging in the space. In terms of self-isolating or working in community, for me it was a bit of a mix and match. There were times where I just wanted to walk out alone, and of course that's a wonderful opportunity also as a woman to get to go and walk alone in the desert out in the middle of nowhere really, um, and know that or feel secure in that you're safe. Um, in the sense that yes, I could step on a snake and get bitten and die. But yeah, there was something wonderful about being alone out there and the opportunity to be more alone than I'd ever been before. And there was also wonderful things in the building of the community, the little creative community. Some nights we'd stay up and we'd have jam sessions, we'd play music together, we'd sing, tell stories. It was really, really wonderful. I haven't had a creative community like that for a little while that felt so cohesive and felt so um, just in tune with each other. And we're all in the same place, going through similar emotions, going through a similar experience. Um, so it was really unifying in that way, that we all were brought together and brought closer together, and we grew so close over the course of the residency. So I'm not sure if that fully answers that part of your question. But as for the second, Time, wow. I might need you to refresh me on everything that it was that you included in this. But in terms of the limitation of time in the residency that we actually had, that was apparent from the get-go. I mean, I mentioned that I threw away all my ideas right before I even touched the ground. Um, and even then I knew, oh no, 2 weeks isn't enough. I need to be here for a year, like to actually uh, fully get into everything I could possibly do here. Um, so so there was definitely a daunting feeling of this is a limited amount of time. And then also the first few days were kind of an orientation. So we weren't even making work for the first few days. Um, and there was a point where I was struggling with ideas, and I had a lot of ideas, but they were all a little bit not great and not quite the right thing. So ended up passing through them or passing over them quite quickly. And then it felt like, okay, maybe some of these could be the right thing, but I would need more time to really delve into them. And then it's also the commitment of, oh, you've only got this amount of time. Now you have to choose which idea you want to play out, because you can't do them all. So I had a few other things that I actually wanted to do, which I didn't end up having time for. But I'm glad that I did go in the direction that I did go. Um, yeah, so that's what I can say to the time limitation of the residency. In terms of timelessness, and I'm not quite sure what were the rest of the points that you brought into that, or mortality and such. Yeah. Yeah, it was quite an experience in that you can really feel the presence of the people who've been there before. It's so, so tangible. And again, like this is not just a small time scale. This is not just the past 100 years. This is tens of thousands of years that humans have been in this space, and their traces are everywhere. I mean, within walking distance of the camp, you could pass Paleolithic tools, just left lying there just on the surface of the land. You're walking on fossils, you're walking on history, layers and layers of history. And like you say, looking up at the sky and the mantis and imagining how that experience must have been for all these other people who came before you. It does feel kind of unifying in that way also. Um, you're so immersed in this landscape, and it's so preserving and holding. It holds everything for so long. And I think that's why maybe I got this impression of the tangibility of the presence of the people who were there before. Um, yeah, yeah, it's hard to put into words, I think. But I think timelessness is a good way of expressing it, in that it kind of feels like time merges into itself a little bit. Like it could be the very same night that I'm standing under those stars and that someone 50,000 years ago is standing under those stars. I don't know if I'm making sense at this point, but I saw you put a thumbs up, so I'm going to assume I did. If there's anything else you want to chat about, please jump right in.
Thanks so much, Glenn. Glenn always has the most deeply engaging questions. I absolutely love it. Now,
Yeah, it's great.
you know, Andrea said that she was feeling teary-eyed. I did too, and I couldn't figure out why. And then Glenn's question and your answer to Glenn's question made me think, is it because it's the sense of myth making returns us to like something elemental? So to a mode of being in which, feeling and place and imagination and meaning are not so divided. And, it feels like it carries the sense of loss, but also foundness, the way you presented it. So lost because of how far we've drifted from that relation, to the earth, to land, and even to people. And then this foundness because it gives us a glimpse of the possibility of belonging again, the way you presented it and the social cohesion. I found it so moving. And I couldn't put my finger. I was annoyed by why am I feeling moved? So Glenn's question just, sent an arrow in the right direction. So thank you for that, Glenn. And yes, thank you again, Erin. If anyone else has questions, just if your hand isn't working like some other people, honestly, just put your cameras on and then you can go ahead. Then I know you want to ask something. There's Emma. I think I saw Emma's hand. Yes, Emma.
Hello. Oh, Erin, I had to come back to listen to you like a magnetic pull. And it's so lovely to hear about your experiences. I actually got booted off about halfway through. My internet's a bit iffy, so I missed some of it. So I'm gonna have to rewatch.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was so frustrated. But anyway, but what I did hear, I absolutely loved. And um, can I just clarify the mantis in the sky? Um, is that reference to the praying mantis?
Yeah, the praying
The
mantis.
insect. Yeah.
Emma, it's mind-blowing. Like I said, it's not just like a little constellation, where they're like, oh, there's a star there and there's a star there, and you put them together and get a hippopotamus or whatever, like it's it's the entire Milky Way galaxy. When you look at it as a whole, it's a mantis. There's dark areas and light areas, and I've scoured the internet to try and find reference to it, and the people who told me about it told me they'd already scoured the internet to try and find reference to it, and there's nothing. And you would so expect this to be like something that's studied by folklorists. I mean, the people there, their god is a mantis, Kachin. And it
Oh,
just
wow.
makes so much sense. It's like it's the myth is so alive, and you can really feel it out there, and it just feels so obvious. But yeah, this it's impossible to find anything about it, which I think is really
I've
sad.
never heard. I've never
Yeah.
heard of it. And I just must tell you this because this is a bit self-obsessed of me, but I just tried to post a picture to the chat, but it didn't work, I don't think. I'm going
Oh,
to send you on WhatsApp after we're finished. But
please.
just before I came online, I was late because this giant praying mantis that is about 3 inches long. It's the biggest praying mantis I've seen in my life, and I've seen many, is over here 2 meters from me. And just as I was boiling some eggs, it dropped down and it nearly landed on the pot. And I managed to get my arm in the way.
Oh
And it's
my.
now the most incredible creature I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've got video of it and pictures of it that I'm going to send you afterwards. And
Oh,
then I
thank
managed to
you.
get the computer on in time. And now you're talking about this mantis in the sky. So I'm a little bit
That's
yeah.
magic for you. It's real.
That's synchronicity.
Yeah.
Erin, I wanted to thank you for your vulnerability about talking about your emotions and the impact the space had on you, because that's a real courageous thing to do. And I really respect that. And you talked about breaking down early in your talk when you got to this incredible space. And I think I've said it many times on this seminar series that Rosie Braidotti was really pivotal for me, the post-humanist, because she said you have to crack up in order to
Mm,
get, if you become aware of a certain level of things that pain you, ecologically speaking. Her thing was it's so big and so momentous, you have to crack up in order to be almost released from the
mm,
gravity of what's going on. So it's maybe a heavy question, but I wanted to ask you how much of your cracking up, of your breaking, when you broke down, you said, how much of that was integral to your experience and what you produced, in terms of like how you ended up engaging with the land in an artistic manner? Like,
mm,
I think we're taught to resist at all costs breaking and discomfort and
mm,
pain and suffering and all those things. But it seems to me that inevitably, in order to somehow reach the better, deeper part of ourselves, that's part of the process. So it's a bit of a heavy question, but how much of the breaking down do you think was like necessary? Or
mm.
I
No,
guess.
you said it, Emma. Yeah.
Mm.
it's completely a necessary part of the process. At least it was for me, and in that instance, particularly so. Um, I again, like I went there with these big grandiose ideas of all this very, very clever, serious art that I was going to make. And then when I got there, it's all this weight of the history of the land and everything that's happened there. And oh crap, now I have to do something that's serious enough and that's going to honor this, that's going to somehow hold all of this inside itself. And it's not possible. I mean, some people have done incredibly good jobs at turning that way in their art. There's a lot of phenomenal artworks out there which have touched on the heavier kind of issues and the more serious issues. Um, I don't think it was my place to do so though. I had to feel it and I had to, like you say, crack open. Um, to in order for me to realize that it's okay to do something whimsical and playful and fun and light. That's also not entirely light. I don't know if it was an entirely light performance that I did, but yeah, something about taking in all of the everythingness and then letting it shatter and just coming out like hee hee la la. I'm gonna go play with shadows now on the other side. It wasn't an escapism really, but yeah, I don't really know how else to put it that was the thing that came out on the other side of this incredible experience. That was just what had to emerge.
I think you put it beautifully. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cool.
Oh, please send me the name of that person, Rosie Bredotti, I think you said.
Yeah, Rosie Bredotti, posthumanist.
Yeah.
I'll send you some text. She's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, put it on the group, please, Emma. I also want to read about it. Andrea has a question. I'm going to pop in before you, Andrea, very quickly. I just wanted to say, I know I'm dying to find out, Erin, how has what you experienced and engaged with there affected you now? Like in your art making now, what have you brought in from there to your present craft?
Definitely want to play with more shadow storytelling, that's for sure. Just the small taste of it that I got out there, and with all of us sitting in a semicircle together, and it was very much a collaborative thing. It wasn't me telling a story at them or this thing with like the mediated story where it's a screen and the audience and the teller are very much divided and separate. It was a immersive thing. I mean, I was behind them telling the story actually. So we had everyone sitting in a semicircle holding their little figure that they were also the voice of, but they didn't know what the story was. And I had a torch and I would come over their shoulder and shine the torch on their character when it was their turn to speak. And then some of them kind of ended up getting into it a little bit. And if the torch was on them, they'd be like, ooh, dee, 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 like playing with their little figure. Um, so yeah, I definitely want to take that a bit further and see what else can come out of the collaborative storytelling shadow puppetry thing, especially now with my PhD and the community art thing that I've got going on. Potentially bring a bit of it into that. Um, and yeah, it's also made me rethink my idea of ephemerality. Like I said, things that are ephemeral here in the land that I'm used to are not ephemeral in the desert necessarily. I'm used to working with wood, and next year I come back and the whole sculpture's rotted away. It's gone, dead, finished, over. But there's wooden sculptures out there that have been out there for years and years and years, not showing any sign of rot or wear. It preserves like crazy out in the desert. So yeah, definitely expanded my thinking about making art with the land and what is ephemeral and um, yeah, yeah, think to say the most of it.
Okay, Jenna's sticking her thumb up. That's vanished, but I'm going to jump in now. Erin, you talked a lot about magic and when the magic happens and all of that. And there's a big association, I think, between magic and play. But the question I want to know is, and it kind of relates to Jenna's question, if you were to repeat or do something again, would you lose the magic? Would you lose it if you go back to the Tankwa even? Or do you make a different kind of magic? I'm not sure, but if you go out with the intention of making magic or recreating it, sometimes it just flippin' doesn't happen. And then what has happened? Why? What goes on there? I don't know if it's a question you can answer, but it's something that I think is quite important to think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think if I was to answer you in cheeky mythological terms, I would say that's the trickster stealing the magic away. But yeah, I don't think you can necessarily intentionally make magic. You can put the conditions in place for it to be magical, perhaps. And I think what it really takes is authenticity. You have to be doing something real and true and not pretentious and not putting on an act to try and seem. It's got to just be something that's real and authentic. And when that happens and the conditions are right, then magic just is inevitable and it emerges. Yeah, I don't think the story that I told out there is something that's repeatable. Maybe, but yeah, I don't think it would have the same quality because it was made for those people, and it happened to be on a moonless. We were there over the period of the new moon, which is when the sky is darkest and the mantis is brightest, and the voices were by the people who were there, and it was all. There were references in the story to things that we had experienced together. Um, so I wouldn't be able to redo that story for any other group at any other time. It's gone, it's finished now, it's done. So it'll be another thing next time.
And you might not ever experience magic again. You might not. I mean, that's part of what play
Thanks,
is, isn't
Andrea.
it? Well, I'm not saying that's true, but you can't put those conditions in place. They just happen to you at sometimes the most unexpected moments and at unexpected times. And yeah, without it, yeah, it's I mean, I find that fascinating, but that's very much the part of play that's associated with magic. I just So no, I don't want to say you're never going to experience magic again. Of course you're going to, but
Got to bring the nihilism back in.
You can't control it. Yeah. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Erin, if anyone else wants to ask a question, please put your hand up or shout out. In the meantime, I'm going to ask you a question. In response to my other question, what did you take from that experience that you're bringing into your present? And one of the things you mentioned was like that collaboration. So what I want to ask you, in a project like this, what does collaboration mean when, you're not only talking about people, but you're talking about the landscape, you're talking about the stars, you're talking about memory, inherited stories, all of that. So that's my first question. And related to that is, how do you balance authorship in a collaborative setting like this? Or is that a secondary concern in something like this?
So sorry, I'm just writing down these so I don't forget because my mind goes away. Okay, what does collaboration mean in terms of working specifically with land art and site-specific work? This is, I think, an important question that anyone working in the discipline of land art needs to confront. Because if you're working, you could either be working in the land or with the land, and they're not necessarily the same. They could be both. Some people, their idea is to come in, the big bulldozer, and plow a big hole and maybe put a spiral there or something and a whole lot of rocks. And then they're like, cool, there's my land art. I don't think that's a collaboration. I think that's you're coming into a space and asserting your will over that space. But it's when you do a bit more research and you take more consideration for the land and the ecosystem and the history and everything about that land that is worth considering if you're going to come in and make a mark on it. So, for example, like, uh, what example could I even give? Um, yeah, you just need to be conscious of how that land works and what actually yeah, what are the workings of the space and the creatures who live there? And is what I do here going to disrupt that, or is it going to add to that? Is it going to be a neutral factor? Um, yeah, so those are all questions that I think land artists need to constantly be asking themselves over and over again and reminding themselves, um, just to make sure that you don't lose track and get all overexcited. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too, like you've got this great idea for a project and you're like, oh, it's gonna look so good, but you're kind of letting your ego get in there a little bit too much. Because I want to build the tallest sculpture on the tallest mountain and it'll be a silhouette and it's going to actually take away from the silhouette of the land that's there first. So yeah, all those kinds of things that one needs to consider when working in collaboration with the non-human. For balancing authorship, I think something like what I did out at the Tankwa this time around. I'm not too concerned about authorship in that respect,
Yes.
because it was a gift. It was a fun thing that was for the people there and was with all the people there. Officially, I suppose it was a collaboration with Makari. So I wrote the story, but she did the voice narration, and she also made the sound. So she did this beautiful, beautiful soundtrack that went along with the storytelling. And I mean, without her, I wouldn't have been able to record everyone's voices to the level of professionalism that it was done. I would have just like taken a phone recording, gone, please speak into this, and it would have been all windy and noisy. And yeah, so I'd say officially, she also helped me out with the actual show itself. So she also had a torch, and there was a separate section that went on. And there was also Kim, who was also played a few hands. He was one of the organizers. Excuse me. And he also had a small part in the story. He brought out the fire at the right time and all that. And of course, all the other artists were also collaborators to different degrees. Um, they were the voice actors and the physical actors of their little characters. So yeah, it was a thing that everyone shared in. I think it was kind of quite special, if I say so myself, that it didn't feel like I was telling a story at them. It felt like we were all sharing in this telling of a story together. Um,
Well, that's how it comes
yeah.
across. The presentation, it came across like that. And,
Hmm.
I'm just a viewer here and
Yay.
I felt immersed in it. And I felt part of the story, even by you telling it. And we
Hooray.
have one last, I see that Norma Timber, do you want to speak to your comment? It will be our last one for the day and then we'll have to close up. But I see you did write in the chat. So you can just speak to your
Hi, Jenna. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I actually had to
Hi,
write it
Noma.
down. Hi, Erin. I had to write it down before the feelings that it invoked in me. I forgot them because when Erin was talking, she didn't sound like really an artist. It sounded more like she's taking us into this sacred space where her description of when I went there, I had my own ideas, but the moment I arrived in the land, I realized that all my ideas were not going to work. And then from then, she then describes how being in the land makes us see the different colors, the praying mantis, and even these figurines that they made and everything. As a novice in art, for me, that's why I say that is poetic sacredness, because the way you describe it, it's very special. It makes me want to go there, makes me want to
You should.
experience it. Yes. Thank you for inviting us. I said, thank you for inviting us to that sacred space. And I also understand what Andrea is saying, that do you think it's even possible if we go there, are we going to be able to recreate that? Because really, for me, that has invoked a desire to go there and experience it for myself. Your respect, even for people who came before you, recognizing that that was special. I'm in awe. I think that the best I could say is that was special, and thank you so much, Erin.
Agreed.
Thank you, Norma.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much,
you should
Norma.
go. You should go. It's you won't recreate the experience I had, but you'll have your own experience and it will also be sacred.
Yeah.
There we go. Andrea's got a hint for Iscia meetings, future meetings. I'm going to hand over to Andrea now. Thanks so much again, Erin.
Erin,
Thank you.
wonderful. I just want to see if I can do a little screen share, just to kind of end off. Oh, I think I can. Let's have a look. There you go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Emma sent it to me by
Mantis.
WhatsApp.
Amazing.
It's right here.
Small magic. Look at
I've
that.
never seen such a big one. It nearly fell into the gas. It's just such a
Wow.
brilliant synchronicity.
Incredible. There's a bigger one up there.
I thought it was a fun thing to end the seminar on,
Amazing.
since you are artists, and we should end it on an end. But thank you, Erin. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, very uplifting, playful, serious, everything mixed up together, and it was a wonderful presentation. And thank you so much for offering it to us. And I'm really hoping for many more, but
No pressure.
Up to the trickster, the trickster figure to decide whether you get to play again or not. Okay, but thanks so much for joining us. And we will, say goodbye, always the horrible part, and see you all next week. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Lovely weekend.
Bye.